Hi everyone, it's Lori and welcome to the channel. In today's episode, we are diving into the gorgeous color tones of the season of autumn. I am so excited for cooler weather and to share this edit with you today. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through my key steps for editing a still life image. And then we're going to target our colors and some tools to add warmth to your images that really capture the beauty of the season of fall. So let's jump in and get started. So I am here in Lightroom Classic, and we are going to make all our edits using just Lightroom Classic today. So to get started with this image, the first thing that I always do is check my histogram and make sure are there any changes I need to make here to the exposure in the basic panel. And for today's image, I think everything looks okay. May just change the highlights and the shadows a little bit. Now, the next thing I do, my second step, is to always look for any distractions or cleanup that I need to do to the image. So for this image, I don't like this white, I think it was a stepping stone in the garden. I don't like that. And this black line right here is just distracting me. So I went ahead and went to using the heal, clone, and the remove tool to fix these areas. So again, that's before and that's after. Now, I had to use all three of these tools to clean up these sections of the image. So I was able to use the remove tool to get rid of that white box, but over here I was having a really hard time. I ended up using the clone tool, and Lightroom cloned this leaf for me, and I think it looks really natural and actually enhances the image. So I'm going to leave it there. All right, so now that we've done the majority of our cleanup, we can move on to the next step. Now, I do want to address this kind of striped lighter area in the image. I'm not going to use the remove tool to fix that. I'm going to wait until I work on the background of the image and see if I can reduce kind of how that stands out right now. All right. So the third thing that I do after number one, we've made sure our exposure is good. Number two, we've done any cleanup. My third step with a still life image is I'm going to work on the background. So typically with a still life image, your background is not very important. The subject, this beautiful grouping of autumn colored flowers, is really the focal point. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and work on this background. Now, I know from experience that when I use the background mask in Lightroom, when I have something that has so much, the colors are very similar. So in the background and in the foreground, it just really blends. So as you can see, Lightroom had a very hard time separating the subject, the vase of flowers, with the background. So this mask is just simply not going to work. So I'm going to delete that mask. So when that happens to you, one thing that I like to do is use a radial gradient. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to make a radial gradient kind of in the center of this image. And if you don't like your first go at it, you can try again. So I'm going to grab that radial. I'm going to keep the feather low. And we're just going to, make that kind of an oval. All right, now what I want to do is I want to click the invert button. And so now we have our mask on the outside, almost like we're creating a vignette. Now what I'm going to do is subtract from this mask, and I'm going to use the brush. And what I want to do, I'm going to enlarge my brush, so I want to remove the mask where my gorgeous fall colors from these flowers are. So I'm just going to come over, basically customize this mask using these two tools. So we're going to come in and just clean up where the mask is, probably come down where that flower dropped, maybe a little bit more down here, and just kind of make it where it fades pretty soft, but bringing back a little bit of that. All right, so now I have the mask where I want it, and so I'm going to start editing the background. First thing I want to do is darken the background. I want to make it less important in the image. So I'm going to darken that. Now I am going to open up the shadows just a little bit but still keep that background nice and warm. Now, the second thing that I want to do with an autumn image is I'm going to take the temperature and move it towards warm, the yellow tones. This is a great trick to add some additional warmth to your beautiful autumn images. So we can see before and after, already really liking the difference that we're making. Now, another tip for editing a fall image with the background is I'm going to take the tone curve, I'm going to raise up the blacks and lower the whites. This is going to give it more of that matte, kind of soft look. So it's giving it that look, which is really nice during the season of autumn. So it's creating a matte kind of finish, but remember, it's only to our background right now. So that's a nice difference. Now for saturation, I'm going to bring the saturation down just a little bit to kind of de-emphasize that green and those kind of red tones. So I'm doing that. And then I'm going to go back and just go ahead and reduce the exposure again, just one more time. All right, so I really like how that background looks. Now, I still am unsure about this little stripe right here. So what I'm going to do is add a mask. I'm going to do an objects and new object mask. And what I want to do, well, let's create that mask again. I'm going to do an object. And there we go. I'm going to select the square here. And I'm just going to come in and select that little area and see what it does. And it did a nice job. So now I'm going to come in, I'm going to try to add a little bit of green to that area. And I'm going to reduce, try to darken it just a little bit. Well, not that much, just a little. And I'm going to reduce the saturation. Now that's a little bit too much, so I'm going to come back up with it. All right, so that's pretty good. I can even add to it with the brush. I'm going to come in and make this smaller. And then I'm just going to brush in that same area just to reduce some of those orange tones and give it more of that green look. All right, so that's got that background ready to go. So now that we have adjusted our background, we have adjusted the cloning that we needed to do. The next step in a still life image like this is we want to edit these gorgeous flowers. And to do that, I'm actually going to do them individually. So let's get started first with the center image, the beautiful dahlia flower. So what I'm going to do is select objects. And again, I'm going to use the square. And I want to come in and just pop right here in the center. And I'm going to go ahead and increase the exposure just to brighten the center of that flower. So you can see before and after. Just going to bring that down just a little bit. And I'm going to add just a little bit of contrast to really bring out the details and also a little bit of opening up the shadows. So just a tiny bit. Next step is I want to brighten the overall flower. So I'm going to do a select subject because I know it selected it before. It didn't do too well this time. So I'm going to undo that. And let's do the object mask again. So I'm going to come in and just draw over my flower. You have to try different masks sometimes, especially with a still life flower image. So now we've got a good mask. I'm going to just pop the exposure on this flower, but I'm also going to increase the saturation, really bringing out that autumn tone. And you can also play with your hue slider. Just going to adjust that a little bit more to that orange color. So that's before and that's after. What a difference in that gorgeous flower. Now I'm going to do another mask. Again, I'm going to use objects. I want to select this little sunflower. And now what I want to do is open up the shadows. That's going to open up the center of that sunflower. I'm also going to add a little bit of exposure and a little contrast. We can also saturate it to really bring out those beautiful autumn tones. So now if you look at the sunflower, we're going to have before and after. What a difference. All right, now we also have all of this gorgeous color here. So what I'm going to do is create a new mask and I'm going to use color range. I'm I'm going to go ahead and select right here. So that is going to select that area. We can see it selected the orange, and I'm going to refine it. So we're just going to make it really selective. And then I'm going to subtract and actually use the objects. So I want to subtract my center flower because we've already altered it. And I think everything else, I'm also going to subtract right here. I don't want to emphasize that. And I'm going to subtract over here. So let's just come in and subtract those areas. All right, now what I'm going to do is go ahead and let's take off our overlay. And I'm going to come in and add some additional saturation to just that gorgeous orange color there. And add a little bit of maybe some warmth. Just kind of play with that to see. So that's before and that's after. We could also darken it if we want to. Yeah, just kind of darken it. So then our emphasis is right over here on our center flower. Now, there we go. Photoshop, Lightroom was loading that image. It took just a minute. So at this point, I am really happy with this image from the before phase to the after. And so I think it is really turned out beautiful, and it's a way to focus on your fall colors using the mask and really thinking individually about the different parts of your image. So let's flip over and do one more fall colored still life together to give you an idea of some additional editing tools that I would do. So I'm going to jump over to this image. This is another one that I took that I think really speaks to the season of autumn. And what I want to do with this image is very similar to what we've done with some of the others. So first I'm going to look at the histogram. Everything looks great. I do have these areas that are a little dark. They kind of a little bit distracting because they're not green. That would be an option that you could take into Photoshop and fix. An option that we can do right here in Lightroom would just be to darken those. And to do that, I would grab my mask and probably use objects. Come in and let's just make a square. There we go. It did a great job. So now I'm going to darken it just a little bit. I'm going to try to change the tint. Give it a little more green. Reduce the shadows. And maybe reduce the saturation. That's making it look a little more blue. Let's try the hue slider. And that's not too bad. I think we would need to reduce the amount. That's a little bit better. Now let's go ahead and add it with a brush. And I'm just going to add those changes and kind of smooth over. And come in and do the same over here. So I do like that it's a little bit more green. So I think it's less distracting. The purpose of these edits are to show you how to do things just right here in Lightroom versus using something like Photoshop. Now I'm going to do subtract and grab the brush, and I'm going to come in and remove that right there so that it just blends really nicely. All right, so that would be the first step, just a little bit of cleanup. It's not perfect, but I think once we finish with this image, it will be just fine. So the next thing that I want to do for this is I'm going to go ahead and go down and do a vignette. So let's go under Effects, and I'm going to just let Lightroom add that vignette to our background. I'm just going to really darken it. I want to bring the emphasis again to these gorgeous fall colored flowers. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I could add that matte look to the entire image. So I'm going to take the blacks. Whoops, we don't want to do that. Reset. Just take your blacks and drag them up, and take your whites and lower them down. And that's just going to give you that kind of dreamy matte look. It also helps de-emphasize our background, which I think really helps this image. Now for our center flower, I'm going to go ahead and do a new mask. And what I want to do right here is go ahead and let's do objects and select it. And now what I want to do is saturate that to really bring out the colors. And I'm also going to use the hue slider just to really emphasize the colors that I want. Okay, that looks pretty nice. And so I'm going to go back to the basic panel, and now I'm going to play with the saturation of the colors. So I'm going to take just orange and really saturate that. You can see what a difference. The magenta, I'm actually going to desaturate, which is going to give it more of an autumn, kind of late fall tone versus bright summer. The purple tones I'm also going to bring back. So I'm going to de-emphasize those and bring down the saturation and also the luminance of the purple. Now we could also take this color, let's see what color that is. Yeah, and make it just a little softer. It is purple and blues. Now this red color I'm actually going to saturate, so I'm going to increase it to bring that out, but I don't like what it's doing to that flower. So here's an option where I can go to my mask, create new mask, and do a color range. I'm going to select just that tone, and I'm going to refine it. So let's refine it to where it's just kind of on these tips. And now I can saturate just that color. And I'm going to actually make it a little cooler or warmer. I think I'm going to add some yellow tones to it. And let's go ahead and subtract it using the objects from this flower. I just don't want that flower to be brighter than my subject. So now if we look at these parts of the image, we can see the before and the after. And I love how the dahlia flower is really standing out. And if you wanted to add a little brightness to the center of that guy, you could. We could also pop the whites just a little bit. So let's do another mask, grab objects, and come around. And then let's pop the whites just a little bit. We could also add a little bit of that yellow glow. There we go. So this was before and after, just kind of making some softness with the vignette, with the mask that we did. So changing our tone curve to overall give that image a really dreamy autumn look, and then working individually with our colors to customize the image for more of those fall tones. So the tricks to that are desaturating colors that are a little bright and look more like summertime, and then saturating those beautiful colors of autumn, the orange, red tones, some of those darker, richer tones. So I hope you enjoyed thinking about your still life images, cleaning up, working on your background, and then customizing the pieces in the image, as well as thinking about those gorgeous autumn colors. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you'll take a minute to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.